Extracts from Making History, the Chronicle of the 13th Century by Professor Adra Mollusk, 3rd edition, New Colburn Press, translated from the original Bandril text. The Human Amwana Galactic Peace Treaty was due to be signed at exactly 3 p.m. on 23rd April 2978 Galactic Meridian Time. It would mark the end of a conflict between two interstellar powers that, if had continued, would have eventually resulted in the destruction of the entire galaxy. Both sides had developed devastating weaponry and pathological refusal to surrender. The humans, advanced bipedal primates with very small teeth and eyes, practically no telepathic ability at all, had spread throughout the stars from their watery home of Earth over many centuries, establishing colonies in the furthest reaches of the galaxy. Powerful and arrogant, as well as inventive, they were truly a race to be reckoned with. The Amwana were a race of amphibian jellyfish with poisonous tentacles and a distrust of ape-descendant species. Naturally isolationist and surprisingly technologically advanced, they protected their long string of colonized gas giants with fierce and efficient violence. No one truly remembers how the conflict between the two space races began. It is rumored to have been the result of a crossfire in a pirate skirmish on the Am-Noir border, which resulted in a preemptive neutronic first strike on an Earth space station. The conflict escalated rapidly in a series of tit-for-tat planetary assaults. In reality, both sides had long been spoiling for a fight with anyone, and the pirate class was simply an excuse. 10 Earth years later, a steady succession of gravity destructors, Z-bombs, and electron repolarization waves had generated interstellar voids littered with burnt-out suns, blackened planets, and irradiated moons. Pressure was brought to bear on both sides to cease hostilities. The rest of the galaxy had no desire to be caught up in such a vicious conflict, especially when entire solar systems were being sacrificed in the name of having the last word. Eventually, after many long months of painstaking and cautious diplomacy, an historic and utterly vital peace treaty was due to be signed. The galactic really was on the brink of an unprecedented and much-needed outbreak of peace. When the prospect of a signed treaty of non-aggression became a reality, Space General Sir Robert Titan Simmons was the only Earthman for the job. A hero of Earth's armed forces, a veteran of many battles, he could allegedly trace his military ancestors back to the 20th century. He thus commanded a strange and special respect from the Am-Noir leadership. His role in the history of the galaxy would be crucial.
I'm very much afraid that this man is dead, announced the doctor, clutching the lapels of his jacket and tapping them with his fingers. But, stammered the thin, nervous-looking man who had served as a Space General's assistant. His voice rose to an appalled squeak. How can this happen? Coronary thrombosis, I'm afraid. A massive heart attack. Yes, it's sad. Yes, indeed, very sad. Never mind that. He kept staring at the dead body, and then looking up at the doctor as if not knowing who or what to believe. What am I going to do? The doctor looked back at the dead man. Well, there isn't a lot you can do. The heart failure, it was fatal. But you're a doctor. For heaven's sake, do something. And what would you suggest, Instant resurrection? Don't try to make sense, young man. The assistant clamped a sweating hand over his face and dragged it slowly down, as if trying to wipe away the sheer panic that was evident in his features. How can I put this? The future of the entire galaxy depended on this man. He pointed a trembling finger to the corpse. At least for the next hour or so. Just then a man thrust his way into the room. Doctor! What's going on? Where are we? I can't make head or tail of the TARDIS instruments and... Oh! He spotted a body slumped on the armchair and halted mid-stride. Do try to keep up, Stephen, my boy. You're no use to me at all, trailing 5 minutes behind all the time. Now, we're on an asteroid, floating in the middle of space, and this is a dead man, and this... I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Harlow. said the assistant. Mr. Harlow, said the doctor with the briefest of smiles. This is my young friend Stephen Taylor. Harlow took a deep breath. In any other circumstances, I would be fascinated to know how you two got here, but right now I have other things to worry about. Yes, it's unfortunate, so yes. Who was he? Someone important, judging by his uniform? The doctor gestured at the body in the chair. Space General Sir Robert Simmons. His initial nervousness seemed to have subsided into a state of shock. He looked pasty-faced and bewildered, his voice dropping to a defeated whisper. I can't believe he's dead. Were you close? Asked Stephen gently. Harlow gave him a withering look, and the doctor tutted irritably. Don't be ridiculous. Mr. Harlow is the Space General's personal assistant. Or at least he was, eh? Harlow lowered himself into a vacant chair, unable to take his eyes off the Space General. The Space General was unable to take his eyes off the ceiling, until the doctor leant over and shut them with a delicate touch. Heart attack. Tragic. Stephen nodded earnestly. That's awful. He didn't even look that old. He was a picture of health, fit as a fiddle, 50 push-ups every morning without fail, strong as a lion. I'd never even been ill, not even so much as cold. I don't understand it. The doctor patted him on the shoulder. You never know the moment, my boy. I know that, but did it have to be this moment, of all moments? This moment being? Prompted Stephen. Space General was here to sign the peace treaty, said Harlow. He rubbed his hand over his face. If anything, he was getting paler. Oh, Lord. This is a disaster. The Omnivore ambassador is in the next room. Simmons was the only human being it'll trust. Without him, the deal's off. He looked up, tears filling in his eyes. Nothing will stop the war now. What war? Asked Stephen, who had never been one for subtlety. Harlow looked at him as though he were mad. Are you insane? What do you mean, what war? What my young friend means is, we've been away. It was a lame finish, and the old man was left rubbing his fingers together as he tried to summon a more convincing follow-up. Out of touch, as it were, yes, of course. We know all about the war, yes. It was all about, except for the details, you might say, yes. Harlow looked quizzically from one to the other. Don't you follow the news? Sometimes, the doctor told him. Other times, it's the football results. Yes. Now, did I hear you mention the Omnivore? Yes, those. Yes. And they're in the next room, you say? The doctor switched his piercing gaze to the steel double doors at the far side of the chamber. Harlow nodded. The Omnivore leader is waiting to sign the peace treaty, to put an end to all these years of death and destruction. At least that was the plan. Why can't we just tell them what happened? I'm sure they'd understand. After all, no one could have anticipated this. He jerked a thumb at Simmons. You obviously don't understand the Omnivore. They're like 6-foot jellyfish, and actually they're incredibly paranoid. It's taken months and months to get them this far, to share an asteroid with a human being, let alone sign a peace treaty. If they find out Simmons is dead, well, I won't just believe that it's a coincidence. They'll suspect something. He's the only man that they trust. The moment they get wind of the fact that he's gone, they'll withdraw. Perhaps alternative arrangements can be made, suggested the doctor. Won't work. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He looked at the Space General's cold remains, curled his lip at the irony. I'm sure I could explain the situation to them. I do have some experience in these matters, yes. I deal with hostile aliens all the time. The Zarbi, the Reals, the Centurites. And don't forget the Daleks, said Stephen. I think we better head, advised the doctor quietly. Harlow was staring into space, his eyes red-rimmed. They'd kill you in an instant. As soon as they realize you weren't Simmons, they'd kill you. Poison tentacles. He jabbed the splayed fingers of one hand at the doctor, who recoiled. You'd be dead before you hit the floor, old man. Don't be impertinent. Old man, indeed. There's plenty of life left in me yet. I'm fit as a fiddle. He glanced at Simmons and winced. You coined a phrase? What's going to happen when Simmons doesn't meet with the Omnivore? Asked Stephen. When will they begin to get suspicious? They won't begin to get suspicious. The Omnivore is suspicious all the time. Harlow got to his feet and began to pace up and down. They're probably flexing their stinging tentacles as we speak. Let's not panic. Panic? I don't know about you, but I don't fancy a painful death by alien neurotoxin, and I don't fancy kickstarting another war either. Stephen's perfectly correct. It's no use panicking, no use at all. We must look on the bright side, yes. I mean, if we all die here today, none of us need ever know what terrible atrocities will follow. Harlow glared at him. There must be something we can do. Admittedly, it'll have to be something quick. The doctor tapped his lips thoughtfully. You know, there's something very odd about all this. He was cut short, however, by the sudden arrival of a uniformed man with short, iron-grey hair and eyes full of burning impatience. He was already speaking as the rear door to the anterior room hummed shut behind him. I just got your message, Harlow. I came over ASAP. He glanced momentarily at the doctor and Stephen and looked back at Harlow. What's going on? Who are these people? Said Harlow. He didn't get any further. The newcomer had allowed his gaze to fall on the dead body in the chair. He pursed his lips as the enormity of what it meant sank in. Then he breathed in sharply, nostrils flaring as he came to a decision. Without Simmons, we're sunk! I'll organize the fleet to move on to the war footing. Let's not be hasty, said the doctor. The newcomer turned sharply. Who the hell are you? What are you doing here? The doctor and Stephen have just arrived after Simmons collapsed. They've been trying to help. I'm afraid we've not been much use so far, admitted the doctor, offering his hand. And just who might you be, eh? Space Colonel Rufus Malvin, responded the newcomer automatically. I'm sorry, but I just don't follow this. It's quite ridiculous. This asteroid is supposed to be an ultra-secure, top-secret installation. Well, yeah, supposed to be, eh? Shouldn't be here, Malvin persisted. Yeah, and yet here we are. Harlow cleared his throat. Sirs, the situation is pressing. There's really no time for any further delays. Quite right, Malvin agreed, although it was clear he was still intrigued by the presence of the doctor and his friend. He drew himself to full height and squared his shoulders. I'll contact the fleet. Don't be foolish. You'll restart an entire galactic war just because one man sadly passed away. What choice do we have? There's nothing we can do, Harlow complained. Isn't there? The doctor's eyes glittered as he looked from one man to another. You're not thinking hard enough. There's nothing to stop the Space General Simmons from signing the peace treaty. Nothing at all. Except that he's dead, pointed out Melvin. The doctor waved the objection aside. Do any of the Omnivoire actually know what Simmons looks like? No, I thought not. In all likelihood, one human being will look very similar to another from the point of view of a 6-foot jellyfish. What are you suggesting, Doctor? Asked Harlow nervously. Isn't it obvious? A substitute, of course. But this is preposterous. I couldn't possibly stand in for Simmons. It'd be suicide. The doctor tittered scornfully. My dear fellow, I wasn't talking about you. An interested frown appeared on Harlow's brow. Who do you have in mind? The doctor tutted. Do I have to think of everything? Use your eyes, man. He turned to his companion. Oh, me? The uniform was stiff and uncomfortable and felt oddly cold. Stephen supposed it was probably just his imagination, an irrational sensation caused by the knowledge that only a few minutes before the uniform had been worn by a corpse. He certainly didn't feel like a space general. He felt like exactly what he was, an imposter for dressing up as a space general, a phony, an intruder. He could feel his vest sticking to his back with perspiration, feel the pulse of blood in his dull ache of gas in his intestines. The double doors hissed open in front of him, and he jumped. The doors opened out into a wide, circular room dominated by an oval desk. Stephen swallowed hard as he saw what was sitting on the far side of the desk. It was 6 or 7 feet tall, a pulsating grey sack of gelatin trailing a number of boneless white limbs. Amoeboid internal organs could be seen throbbing from within the transparent mantle, where the tentacles twitched idly. Stephen was face to face with the omnivore leader, and it was a shockingly ugly creature. But with a cold chill of fear, Stephen knew that unless he succeeded in convincing this alien he was Space General Robert Simmons, it was going to get a damn sight uglier. It would be suicide, Malvin had said. With a kind of awful formality, the omnivore rose slightly from behind the desk. It appeared to be floating, presumably buoyed by the translucent sack of gas visible beneath its mantle. Stephen sought to control his pulse rate and breathing as the creature let out a strange, bubbling squawk. It sounded like a frog falling to its death down a drain pipe. Then the words in English spurted from the grill of a tiny, hovering interpreter robot.
Space General Simmons.
Stephen had never had any difficulty understanding the languages of the alien species he met, presumably thanks to travelling with the Doctor. He found his cumbersome routine a bit disconcerting, but then again, the Omnivore spoke again, in its strange gurgling voice, and he found that he could understand it. And then the robot would offer its own translation.
Welcome, Space General.
I was beginning to think you'd never turn up.
Translated the interpreting machine with a kind of diplomacy that even Stephen found questionable. But such was the conviction of its metallic voice that Stephen found himself automatically looking behind him, just to be sure that the real Simmons hadn't risen from the dead and followed him in. Stephen then looked back at the alien leader, open-mouthed, wondering how he should respond.
You are Space General Simmons, I take it.
Very reluctant and suspicious to meet you, Space General Simmons.
Hello? Stephen managed eventually, with all the aplomb he could muster.
Greetings of misery.
I am Lasha Lassis.
Announced the alien, and inevitably the robot translated in full as...
I am the severely toxic gland leader.
Stephen swallowed hard. How do you do? He started to hold out his hand, but quickly withdrew it when the Omnivore's tentacles started uncoiling towards him in response.
I cannot imagine how you procreate.
Rasped the interpreter on Stephen's behalf.
Do you not enjoy physical contact?
You offend me with your lack of intimacy, human.
Eventually, Stephen replied, I fear that we may not be physically compatible, and instantly regretted it.
A pox on your alien notions of intimacy.
This time Stephen had simply had enough. Can't we switch that wretched thing off? Lashur Lysis quivered and gurgled while the translator robot spun around and fixed Stephen with its glowing camera eye.
This machine cannot be deactivated.
It managed to squeak just before Stephen reached up, plucked it out of the air and banged it hard on the desk. The little sphere rattled and buzzed for a second and then went quiet. When Stephen let go, the thing rolled off the edge of the table and landed with a thud on the carpet. Thank goodness for that!
You speak our language.
Stephen tried to smile. Sort of. At least we can understand each other for now without any help. Lashur Lysis bubbled with intense satisfaction.
What a relief. I thought those things were supposed to make life easier.
Me too. But it's often better to manage without them. I'm sorry if it insulted you.
Think nothing of it, Space General. It is a relief to find that you are so accommodating and intelligent. We understand all human beings to be ignorant scum.
Well, let's forget all about that and try again, shall we? In the anterior room, Harlow, Malvin, and the Doctor were watching Stephen's progress on a monitor screen. He's doing remarkably well, commented Harlow. He had been chewing his own nails to the bone until Stephen had knocked out the translator. He must have a real flair for languages. The Doctor was nodding proudly. I taught him everything he knows, of course. He's a naive blunderer. He'll be dead in the next minute. You almost sound as if you wish that were true, said the Doctor. He stared accusingly at the Space Colonel. Well, it's madness. He's completely unqualified. I suppose you think it should have been you in there. Not likely. Shh, said Harlow, pointing out the monitor. This is getting interesting.
This is indeed a great moment in history for our respective species, although more so for yours, of course.
Exactly what I was thinking, replied Stephen graciously. He was sitting at the desk opposite the Omnivore, and beginning to get the hang of things now. Disposing of the translator had really broken the ice. Some of the Omnivore's diplomatic skills needed a bit of getting used to, but Stephen really couldn't take any offence. After all, the insults were largely accidental and not really aimed at him personally. How could they be, when Lashur Lysis thought he was somebody else entirely?
Come closer.
Trying not to look like he was holding his breath, Stephen edged closer to the alien. The glistening slime that oozed around the mantle gave off a noxious odour.
Time is growing short, Space General.
I came as quickly as I could. I'm afraid there was a slight delay.
No matter.
We can still sign the peace deal, Stephen continued. He looked at the documents spread across the glossy oval desk. Is this it? Well, where's the pen? He patted his pockets of his borrowed uniform. I don't seem to have one with me. I don't suppose. He looked inquiringly at Lashur Lysis. No, I don't suppose you do.
There is no need for undue haste, surely. This is a momentous occasion. It should not be rushed.
No, of course not. Stephen sat back, struggling to keep a lid on his impatience. He just wanted to get the job done and get out. If all it took was signing a name on a piece of paper, then all the better.
Do you have another appointment? Your body language, such as I am able to tell, indicates that you are very keen to leave.
No, I've got all day, no plans. Apart from this meeting, of course. There was a long, awkward silence while Lushaw Lassus quivered, and the long, pallid tentacles coiled and uncoiled with a horrible squelching sound. Stephen had no idea if the creature was luffing or preparing to attack. Or possibly both. Only Harlow was still watching the monitor screen. The doctor was busy fielding questions from Rufus Malvin. You have yet to explain how you came to be here, Doctor.
Yes, it's unfortunate for you, isn't it? Retorted the doctor. Really, I will not be subjected to an interrogation.
I could make this a formal inquiry if you prefer.
It won't be necessary.
Sincerely hope not. Malvin sat down and crossed his legs calmly. How did you get here? It's a simple enough question.
We came in through that door.
The doctor replied with equal tranquility. He pointed at the real doors leading from the asteroid's lateral airlock.
Just as you did.
Then where's your spaceship?
My dear young man, you must have seen the large blue police box in the airlock that you came in.
Yes?
Then you have seen all you need to.
The doctor waved his hand dismissively and turned to Harlow.
Now listen here, my boy. I'd like to examine that body one more time, if I may.
Harlow looked startled at the sudden change of subject. Of course. Why?
There's something bothering me. Something not quite right about it.
What are you trying to imply?
I'm not trying to imply anything. I'm merely curious.
A smile flickered over the old man's lips.
It's my only vice.
What's there to be curious about? The man died of a heart attack. You said so yourself.
Oh, there's no doubt about the heart attack. It's the cause I'm interested in.
The fate of the entire galaxy is resting on your friend's shoulders.
Stephen has very broad shoulders. I shouldn't worry.
He could be exposed at any moment. The Omniwar aren't stupid, you know. The doctor bustled past the outraged colonel heading for the couch where Space General Simmons's body had been laid out. The doctor paused and looked back at Melvin with a cold, penetrating stare.
Don't concern yourself with Stephen. My friend is a very capable young man, and I have every confidence in him.
Harlow pushed back the sheet that was covering the Space General's face. The handsome features looked waxy and stiff.
Did you say this man was in excellent health, my boy?
Right up till the moment he died. He was in perfect shape. Everyone knew that. The doctor stroked his lip thoughtfully.
Of course, it isn't unknown for a otherwise fit young man to drop dead of an unexpected heart attack. But it's rather uncommon, and at such a crucial time as well.
What are you trying to say? Melvin asked, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. How can you be sure it wasn't the stress of this thing? Signing the peace treaty. Being the only man the Omniwar trust. The strain must have been intolerable, even for Simmons. Said the doctor. Lushaw Lassus was staring closely at Stephen. At least, Stephen assumed the alien was staring at him. A rather odd-looking globule in the center of the thing's transparent mantle had swiveled around, and some sort of lens appeared to be focusing on him. Stephen tried a friendly smile, and then realized that a facial expression could be misinterpreted. Baring his teeth like that, the Omniwar might assume he was aggressive. But then, the Omniwar didn't appear to have any kind of teeth, and therefore might not even recognize the expression at all.
Like you, Space General Simmons.
Stephen leaned back in his seat slightly. Well, I like you too, Lisha? May I call you Lisha?
Is abbreviation of my title a sign of affection?
Not exactly, but it means we're friends, I suppose.
I understand.
You can call me Stephen, Robert, Bob, if you like. Stephen tugged at the collar of his borrowed uniform, aware that he was sweating profusely.
Bob, I cannot help noticing that you are oozing.
Yes, it's very warm in here.
I also am oozing.
I had noticed. Nothing wrong with that, is there?
Nothing at all. Not in my condition.
Good. What condition?
I am pregnant, Bob.
Stephen practically choked. Well, congratulations! That's marvellous!
It is the reason I am here.
I thought you were here to sign a peace treaty. Talking of which... Monsieur Lysis held up the tip of a tentacle in a clear request for silence.
You do not understand. When an omnivore is carrying its young, it must seek a warm, safe place to lay its eggs.
Well, that sounds sensible.
Naturally, hormonal changes within an egg-bearing omnivore dramatically reduce tension levels. Sometimes we are overcome with an urge to conciliate, and as an omnivore leader, I must take that impulse to its fullest conclusion.
Stephen thought about this for a moment. You mean you've agreed to stop a war and sign a peace treaty because you're expecting?
Precisely.
Then congratulations are doubly in order, Lasher. I can't think of a better reason for pursuing peace. I hope you and your children will live long and happy, safe lives.
That is most generous, Bob.
Stephen nodded, smiling. Things were really going remarkably well. He was almost starting to relax. As far as these omnivores were concerned, he felt that their reputation as paranoid warmongers may have been a bit exaggerated. But that's often the way of things in war. In actual fact, the omnivores were proving to be, well, rather human. Despite their massive cultural and philosophical differences, he and Lasher Lysis seemed to be getting along just fine. He had to admit that he rather liked her. Him. It. Which made the fact that he was deluding the omnivore feel so much worse. He was starting to feel like a personal betrayal rather than a risky bit of subterfuge. The Doctor always maintained that the end never justified the means. Or rather, that it rarely justified the means. In fact, when Stephen thought about it, he realized that the Doctor generally changed his opinion on a particular edict to suit the circumstances. Even so, it simply didn't feel right to deceive Lasher Lysis like this. But, although Stephen was satisfied that he had managed to make friends with the alien, could he possibly risk telling the truth now? That might not only jeopardize the relationship, it could jeopardize the whole galaxy. Suddenly, he was starting to perspire again.
You are oozing, Bob.
Yes, I know.
Then you must know what I am going to ask of you.
I'm sorry?
There is no need to apologize, Bob. I understand that you must feel nervous. This is a difficult time for both of us.
You're telling me?
No, Bob. I am asking you. I cannot wait much longer. The time for seeding is close.
Seeding? The Lasher Lysis rose slightly, gases bubbling through the thick slime that covered its mantle. The transparent eye in the center of the membrane seemed to contract, as if fixing Stephen with a baleful glare.
Bob, I feel as if I know you well. Accordingly, I have a favor to ask.
Does this involve seeding?
Yes, it does, Bob. I would be honored if you were to allow me to lay my eggs inside you.
This man was murdered,
announced the Doctor, wagging a finger at Space General Simmons' corpse. A sudden, cold-as-metal silence fell in the anterior room. Murdered? What on earth makes you say that?
There is evidence of deliberate poisoning.
Don't be ridiculous. What could anyone hope to gain by killing the only man capable of securing the peace deal with the Omnivore?
Oh, yes. What, indeed?
The Doctor's beady eyes screwed up as a smile flashed momentarily across his face.
What could anyone hope to gain, except war?
No one wants war.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
The Doctor turned to face Melvin.
Would you?
I've had enough of you, old man, said Melvin, suddenly drawing his service pistol and leveling it at the Doctor. The Doctor stiffened but stared defiantly back at the Space Colonel.
More killing,
Simmons had to go. He could have cost us the war.
Yes?
The Earth Military Union.
EMU.
EMU, Melvin confirmed. His pistol never wavered. It was aimed squarely at the Doctor's head. Earth can win this war. The Omnivore only agreed to a peace deal to save their slimy necks. If we sign the peace treaty now, it will allow the Omnivore the time to regroup and counterattack. And that must not happen. But the peace treaty will prevent that, insisted Harlow.
If you believe that, then you're a bigger fool than this old man.
Harlow's voice dropped to a whisper. Let me get this straight. You killed Space General Simmons? Melvin nodded briefly. Omnivore toxin, administered on board his flagship just before he transferred down to this rock. You're setting them up. Winning the war. Everything's going to plan. Except for one thing, said the Doctor triumphantly. You couldn't have planned for Stephen and me to be here. You mean I couldn't have planned it better, old man? Nonsense, the Doctor said, although his smile was fading. Stephen's in there now, with the Omnivore leader, signing the peace treaty on Simmons' behalf. You don't think he'll actually succeed? Sneered Melvin. I'll only let you go ahead with this insane plan because it was so ridiculously perfect. They'll find Simmons dead, poisoned by the Omnivore, and then the Omnivore will discover your friend is the imposter, an Earth assassin, and kill him. Don't you see? This peace treaty will be ruined. The war will continue, and we can press our advantage and wipe the Omnivore from the face of the galaxy. I'm touched that you should consider me for your role of incubator for your young, Lisha, said Stephen carefully. But I honestly don't think I'm the man for the job.
Not true. You are perfect, Bob. You are strong and honorable. What better start could there be for my hatchlings? Warm meat for them to feast upon at the moment of birth.
Stephen swallowed. Really, Lusher, I can't. But the Omnivore would not be deterred.
You must not refuse, Bob. Not only would you be providing a ready supply of fresh meat, but you would also be cementing the treaty between our peoples. The entire Omnivore interest would look upon you as a hero and savior. They would sing your praises throughout the 37 star systems. Epic poems would be written in tribute to your name from here to Tau Ceti.
Surely there must be someone else.
No one. You are Earth's most trusted and honored warrior. To give yourself in this way would be the noblest of actions.
It would be madness. And as for being Earth's most trusted and honored warrior, well, Lisha, I have to tell you something.
Yes?
Lisha Lysis quivered and raised its many tentacles, the tips of which were dripping with a gelatinous green substance. The very sight made Stephen's mouth go dry.
You must be brief. I do not have long. My egg sac is distending.
Wait!
I cannot.
Stephen covered his eyes. This is a nightmare! The shore Lysis rose up on a balloon of gas, and its tentacles parted like a curtain of snakes to reveal an egg sac beneath, a grey vein membrane bulging with hundreds of fist-sized eggs. Stephen could see the tiny Omnivore embryos squirming, wriggling, and twisting inside the luminous pods. He could feel himself starting to ooze again.
The time is upon me, Bob. My hatchlings crave meat.
Several things happened at once. Stephen stood up abruptly, sending his chair crashing backward. The door to the chamber hung open, and Rufus Malvin burst in, holding a gun. Die, you alien filth! Cried Malvin, taking aim. The Doctor and Harlow appeared behind him. Don't be a fool, man! Bellowed the Doctor, grabbing his arm. Malvin's aim was spoiled, but not enough. The gun discharged, and the laser beam burned a hole straight through the Omnivore leader. The shore Lysis twisted around in pain and confusion.
What is this treachery?
No! Roared Stephen, hurling himself across the desk at Malvin. He smashed into the space colonel, knocking the gun clean out of his hand.
Bob!
Screamed the wounded Omnivore. It slithered over the table and wound its tentacles around the struggling men. The aliens seemed to engulf them for a moment, gurgling and slurping. Harlow scooped up the fallen pistol, training it on the creature, but the Doctor pushed the gun down. Enough shooting! He snarled, his eyes burning with indignation. Don't you people ever learn? Look! Breathed Harlow, pointing at the Omnivore. Its tentacles had uncoiled, allowing Stephen to slip free. Stephen looked shakily. What about Lisha Lysis? The Omnivore reared up, but it was clear that something was very wrong. Its mantle was no longer clear. The transparent body was cloudy and milky liquid was streaming from a gaping hole. Lisha! Stephen turned back to the Doctor, stricken. Doctor, we must do something! She's expecting! My dear boy, I'm so sorry. Lisha Lysis sank back against the table. Trailing tentacles, with a sputtering gurgle, it turned to Stephen.
Do not concern yourself, Bob, my friend. It is over.
But your eggs! Stephen knelt down next to the alien.
The seeding is done.
Stephen turned to look at the man who had shot Lisha. A space colonel lay on his back, a look of terrified agony on his face. His uniform tunic was torn open, allowing a grotesquely swollen stomach to be seen. The pale skin of the man's abdomen pulsed with the Omniwar Young moving inside. Stephen turned back to Lisha. You laid them inside him?
An ignoble decision, I know. But in the heat of the moment, I could not let it be you, Bob.
Stephen felt his throat tighten. But what about the songs of praise? The epic poems?
An exaggeration, a pathetic and worthy deception. Forgive me.
I don't know what to say.
Say nothing.
But you've been shot. You're wounded. You need help. The Omniwar trembled and sagged further. More fluid bubbled from its cloudy internal organs.
It is of no matter. The wound itself was not fatal, but I am afraid death is a natural part of the egg-laying process. I have fulfilled both my duty and my biological function.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for all of your help, Bob.
Well, there's something else you should know, began Stephen thickly, but he was stopped with the doctor's hand on his shoulder. There's nothing else you can do, my boy, except one thing. He held out a document and a pen. Stephen stared at it for a long moment.
The peace treaty must be signed,
declared Lisha Lysis. It raised a shivering tentacle, but lacked the strength to hold the pen.
I am sorry. I'm too weak.
Allow me, said the doctor gently. He took the pen and scrawled a complex series of symbols across the bottom of the paper.
Most kind.
Stephen slowly took the pen and in a rather wobbly fashion wrote Robert Simmons underneath the doctor's immaculate forgery of the Omniwar's signature. Immediately the doctor straightened and handed the document over to Harlow. You know what to do with this, young man. Now get cracking! Harlow glanced at the doctor and Stephen, and then the Omniwar leader. With a decisive nod, he stepped over the body of Malvin and headed for the exit. Peace in our time, wondered Stephen bitterly as Harlow left. Let's hope so, my boy. Let's hope so. Stephen looked down at the body of Rufus Malvin, which lay twitching and jerking as the alien hatchlings inside set about their ravenous business. That could have been me! The doctor patted him on the shoulder. Yeah. Don't get sentimental, my boy. Stephen turned back to Lisha Lysis. The Omniwar had collapsed into a motionless heap of jelly. Dead.